Earlier, Jordan had agreed to step into the most outrageous agreement of his life, an agreement that even he, during those long nights lying on a hospital cot, waiting for updates on Aria, could not believe he had nodded to. He agreed to give billionaire Vivienne Drake a child. In return, she would cover the entire cost of the surgery that would save Aria, the little girl who was his whole world. Aria had undergone her operation successfully. Vivienne was now pregnant, and between two people from two completely different worlds, something had begun to grow. Not love, not yet, but concern, understanding, warmth, the kind both had forgotten long ago. Jordan thought the hardest part was over. He was wrong, because in the shadows, someone else had seen everything. Henderson, the vice chairman of the board, a man willing to burn Vivienne to the ground just to seize power, now held photos that could destroy both her reputation and her life overnight. And just when things seemed to be settling, Leah, Jordan's ex-wife, the woman who abandoned Aria when the girl needed her most, suddenly returned demanding to see her child. But danger and trouble were not coming solely from the outside. Fate had never been merciful to anyone, and it always demanded a price. When Vivienne made a new proposal even more insane than the first agreement, a marriage, Jordan was forced to confront the question he had spent his entire life avoiding. Could he truly love this woman? And if he could, would that love be strong enough to protect them from everything waiting ahead? Everything began on a Friday afternoon. Jordan had just returned from the hospital after visiting Aria when he saw Margaret, the housekeeper, waiting by the front door of the mansion looking uneasy. Her dark brown skin was slightly flushed with worry. "Mr. Hale, Mrs. Drake wants to see you immediately in her office." "What happened?" Margaret only shook her head softly, avoiding his eyes, offering no explanation. Jordan stepped into Vivienne's office. She was standing by the window with her back to him, but he could clearly see her tense shoulders, her hands clenched tight as if holding herself together. Her natural coils were pulled back in a low bun, exposing the tension in her neck. "Vivienne." It was the first time he'd called her by her first name, not Mrs. Drake. He didn't know when it happened, but the distance between them had shrunk enough that formal titles suddenly felt foreign. Vivienne turned around. Her deep brown face was pale with stress, her dark eyes filled with fear. "Henderson knows." Those 4 words hit Jordan like ice water thrown straight into his chest. "Knows what? What do you mean?" Vivienne handed him a brown envelope. Inside were photographs. A photo of Jordan walking out of the mansion. A photo of Jordan and Vivienne standing by the window. A photo of Jordan holding her hand in the garden, and one taken from afar, but clear enough to show Vivienne resting her head on Jordan's shoulder. "He hired a private investigator to follow me," Vivienne said, her voice trembling slightly. "For the past 2 weeks. I had no idea." Jordan stared at the photos, feeling as if the ground beneath him had cracked open. "What does he plan to do with these?" "He called me this morning." Vivienne lowered herself onto the chair, her hands circling her stomach as if protecting the child inside. "He said that if I don't resign as CEO and hand over control to him, he will send these photos to the media, to shareholders, to everyone." "Resign?" Jordan almost couldn't believe his ears. "You built this company for 15 years. "I know." Vivienne cut him off, bitterness thick in her voice. "But he doesn't care. He's waited for this moment for years, and now he has exactly what he needs." Jordan stepped closer and knelt in front of her. "We'll find a way. There has to be a way." "What way?" Vivienne lifted her eyes to him, her dark brown irises full of despair. "Those photos are real. What's between us is real. If the press finds out, they will tear me apart. Black female CEO pays janitor to get her pregnant. Can you imagine that headline?" She stood up abruptly, pacing the room like a trapped animal. "And it's not just about reputation." She clenched her fists. "The stock will plunge. Partners will pull out. Everything my father built, Everything I've spent my entire life protecting could collapse in a single night. Jordan rose to his feet. His head spun. One thought echoed relentlessly. It was all his fault. If he hadn't come into her life, if he hadn't agreed to that insane deal from the beginning, Vivienne wouldn't be cornered like this. "I'll leave," he said, his voice tight. "I'll disappear. You can tell Henderson I'm just a gardener or a distant acquaintance. I'll never show my face in public." "And the baby?" Vivienne looked straight at him. "Do you think Henderson will ignore the fact that I'm having a child with no father?" Jordan fell silent. She was right. Even if he vanished, the problem remained like a ticking bomb. "So what do you plan to do?" Vivienne stood still for a long time. The silence became so sharp that Jordan could hear the ticking of the wall clock. Then she looked up, her voice frighteningly calm. "There is one way." "What way?" She met his eyes without hesitation. "We get married." Jordan was certain he had misheard. "Get married?" "Yes." Vivienne nodded, her expression slowly returning to the sharp, icy resolve she had worn in the early days. "If we get married, the story changes entirely. It won't be a scandal anymore. It's simply a CEO marrying the man she loves, carrying his child. Normal, legal, nothing for anyone to twist." "But that would be a lie." "This world is full of lies, Jordan." Vivienne exhaled softly, exhaustion in her voice. "Do you think marriages in high society are about love, happiness? No. Most are arrangements, contracts. At least between us there is still respect." Jordan shook his head. He felt as if he'd wandered into some strange dream. "I can't. This isn't how things should happen." "Then how should it happen?" Vivienne stepped closer, her dark eyes glistening but tense. "Do you have a better idea? Can you save my company? Can you make Henderson disappear?" Jordan couldn't answer. "I'm not forcing you," Vivienne continued, her voice softening. "You have fulfilled your end of the deal. Your daughter had her surgery. You can walk away right now, and I won't take anything back." She turned her back as if ending the conversation. "But if you stay, if you agree to help me survive this, I will make sure you and Arya have the best life possible. Always." Jordan stood frozen, his mind tangled. One path was freedom. He could take Arya far away to a place where no one knew their names. Live a simple life. No scandals, no Henderson, no iron gates. Forget this mansion. Forget Vivienne. Forget everything. The other path was what? A paper marriage? A performance that might last the rest of his life? But then he thought of Vivienne, the woman curled up crying alone in her late mother's room, the woman reading children's books at midnight, the woman who had pulled him and Arya out of the abyss without asking for anything except a child, and he thought of the baby she carried, his baby. "Vivienne." She turned. Jordan stepped closer, his heartbeat loud but his eyes steadier than ever. "If I agree, this won't be a fake marriage." Vivienne frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" "I've been by your side for the past 2 months," Jordan said slowly, choosing each word carefully. "I've seen you cry. I've seen you laugh. I've seen you strong enough to terrify anyone, and I've seen you fragile enough to fear letting anyone close. And He hesitated, battling himself. "I don't know if this is love. I'm afraid to call it that. But I know I care about you, truly care. Not because of money, not because of the deal." Vivienne froze, her full lips parting slightly, unable to speak. "If we get married," Jordan continued, "I want it to be real. At least to try to be real. Not a performance for the cameras only to return to being strangers once the doors close." He reached out and took her hand. Her brown skin was warm against his. "Are you willing to try?" Vivienne looked down at his hand holding hers, the calloused hand of a laborer, the hand that carried Arya through clinics, the hand that cooked her eggs in the middle of the night, the hand that always reached for her whenever she looked like she might break. She looked up again, her dark eyes shimmering. For the first time in her life, a man had spoken to her like this without wanting anything in return. "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't know how to love someone anymore, Jordan. I forgot how." "Then we'll learn," he said, his voice warm and steady. "From the beginning." Vivienne glanced at their joined hands one more time, as if weighing her entire life in that single moment. Then she nodded. "All right." Her voice trembled, but the hopelessness in her eyes had faded. "We'll try." News of Vivienne Drake's wedding spread like wildfire. Within just 24 hours of the official announcement, every newspaper in Washington, big and small, ran the story. The most powerful black female billionaire in Seattle was marrying an unknown man. No one knew who Jordan Hale was. No one understood why Vivienne would choose someone so ordinary, and that was exactly what Vivienne wanted. She held a short press conference, appearing in public with Jordan standing beside her. Vivienne wore a cream-colored dress, her belly slightly rounded, and for the first time in many years she gave a genuine smile in front of the cameras. Her deep brown skin glowed under the lights. "I know people have a lot of questions," she said, her voice calm. "But love doesn't need an explanation. Jordan is the man I chose, and I have never been happier." The reporters immediately erupted, questions firing off like machine gun bursts. Vivienne didn't answer them one by one. She simply took Jordan's hand, smiled, and said, "We'll be having a small private ceremony in 2 weeks. Thank you all for your concern." Then she turned and walked away, leaving the press stunned. Henderson couldn't bear it. He had prepared the perfect scandal, and Vivienne turned it into a romantic love story. He had no more cards to play. A week before the wedding, Jordan brought Aria to the mansion. She had fully recovered from the surgery. Her brown cheeks were rosy, her dark eyes sparkling, her laughter bright and clear like wind chimes. Her natural hair was styled in 2 puffs, adorned with pink ribbons. When the car stopped in front of the gate, Aria's mouth fell open. "Daddy, is this a castle?" Jordan chuckled, though anxiety twisted inside him. This was Aria's first time meeting Vivienne. He had no idea how things would go. Vivienne was waiting at the door. She wore a simple floral dress, her natural coils flowing freely, looking gentler than Jordan had ever seen her. When Aria stepped out of the car, the two of them looked at each other. 1 second of silence. Then Aria tilted her head, studying Vivienne with innocent curiosity. "Who are you?" Vivienne bent down to her eye level. "I'm your dad's friend," she said softly. "My name is Vivienne." "Vivienne," Aria repeated. "Your name is like a princess in a cartoon." Vivienne let out a small laugh, a real laugh. "Is that so? No one has ever called me a princess before." "But you live in a castle," Aria pointed at the mansion. "Anyone who lives in a castle is a princess." Vivienne turned to look at Jordan, her dark eyes shimmering. "She's really smart." Jordan could only smile, watching Vivienne and Aria together. He felt a gentle warmth spread through his chest. That afternoon, Mrs. Marjorie arrived as well. Jordan was nervous about this meeting. His 68-year-old mother was traditional. How would she react to the news that her son was about to marry a billionaire, a woman he'd known for less than 3 months? But Mrs. Marjorie surprised him. When Vivienne came out to greet her, Mrs. Marjorie didn't ask about money, status, or any of the things Jordan had feared. The older black woman simply took Vivienne's hands, looked straight into her eyes, and asked, "Do you care about my son?" Vivienne froze. It was a question she had never prepared an answer for. She hesitated. "I'm learning how to care, and Jordan is teaching me." Mrs. Marjorie was silent for a few seconds. Then she nodded. "That's enough," she said gently. "Love is not something that comes ready-made. It's something you build day by day." She turned to Jordan. "I don't understand everything that's going on. I'm old. I can't keep up with your lives. But I see that you're happy. I see Arya is healthy. And I see this woman looking at you with the same eyes I once had for your father." She smiled, her warm brown face creasing with joy. Sometimes life brings us things we never expected. Our job is to receive them. 3 days before the wedding, Jordan got a call from an unknown number. Jordan Hale. The woman's voice froze him on the spot. "Leah." "I heard you're getting married," Leah said, her voice tinged with bitterness. "To a billionaire. You've really done well." Jordan stepped out onto the balcony, away from Arya, who was playing in the living room. "What do you want?" "I want to see Arya." "No." "You can't stop me," Leah said, her voice sharp. "I'm her mother. I have rights." "You left," Jordan replied coldly. "You left when Arya needed her mother most. You don't get to just come back because you feel like it." "I left because I had no choice," Leah burst out. "Arya was sick. We had no money. Do you think I could handle that?" Jordan's fist tightened. "And your way was to go with a rich man and abandon your own child?" Silence on the other end. "I know I was wrong," Leah said quietly, "but I'm still her mother. I have the right to see her." Jordan thought of Arya, of the photo she kept hidden under her pillow, of the question, "Does Mommy Leah still think about me?" "Let me think about it," Jordan said. "I'll call you back." He hung up and stared out at the vast garden. That night, Jordan told Vivienne, Arya was asleep. The mansion was wrapped in silence. "She wants to see Arya," Jordan said heavily. Vivienne was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know what to do," Jordan sighed. "Part of me wants to say no, to protect Arya from being hurt again. But the other part thinks Arya needs her mother," Vivienne said softly. Jordan nodded. Vivienne walked toward the window. "I have no right to tell you what to do, but I can tell you one thing." She turned back, her gaze softening. "I lost my mother when I was little. All these years, I've only wished I could see her one more time, to ask the questions I never got to ask." Her voice trembled. "Arya still has a mother. That woman did wrong, but she's still her mother. One day when Arya grows up, she'll want to decide for herself whether to forgive or not." Vivienne sat beside Jordan. "Don't take that chance away from her." Jordan looked at Vivienne, the woman he'd once thought was cold and untouchable, yet who had the softest heart. "Thank you," he said quietly. Vivienne took his hand. "We're family now, Jordan, and family faces everything together." The wedding took place on a late autumn afternoon when the maple leaves had turned a brilliant orange and gold. Vivienne opted for a simple ceremony, just a few dozen close guests in the garden behind the mansion. No reporters, no cameras. Vivienne wore an ivory wedding dress, simple and unadorned. Her belly was clearly rounded at 4 months. Her dark skin glowed against the white fabric, and her natural hair was adorned with small white flowers. Jordan stood there in the first suit he had ever worn, watching the woman walk toward him. 3 months ago, he had been a janitor mopping floors at midnight on the 61st floor of a skyscraper. Now, he was marrying the owner of that building. Arya was the flower girl. She wore a pale pink dress, holding a basket of petals, walking ahead of Vivienne with serious purpose. Her brown skin looked radiant. Mrs. Marjorie sat in the front row, tears streaming down her wrinkled brown face. Dr. Raphael Moretti stood quietly in a corner, a rare smile on his face. Margaret kept dabbing her eyes with a white lace handkerchief. When it came time for vows, Jordan spoke first. "Vivienne, 3 months ago, I didn't know who you were. I only knew you were someone I would never dare dream of. Someone from another world." He took her hand. "But then I realized behind the walls you built was a woman lonely down to her bones, a woman who had forgotten what it felt like to be loved." His voice caught. "I have nothing to give you. No money, no power, no status. but I have this heart. And from today on, it belongs to you completely, without conditions." Vivienne stood there, tears streaming down her face. For the first time in her life, someone had said such words to her, not because of her money, not because of her power, but because of who she was. Then it was Vivienne's turn. "Jordan," she called softly, "I've lived 39 years without knowing what it feels like to truly be loved. I always thought love was a luxury, something I didn't deserve." Her hand tightened around his. "Then you appeared, a man who mopped floors at midnight, a single father who didn't know how wealthy I was and didn't care." Her voice shook. "You showed me that kindness doesn't require money, that a plate of scrambled eggs at midnight can be warmer than any lavish banquet." She looked into his eyes. "I don't know if I deserve you, but I promise I will try, every day, for you, for Arya, for the child we're about to have, for the family I've waited my whole life for." As they exchanged rings, Arya whispered loudly, "Daddy, Miss Vivienne is crying. Is she sad?" Jordan knelt beside his daughter. "No, sweetheart, she's happy." "But why do people cry when they're happy?" "Because sometimes when someone is too happy, the heart can't hold it all, so it spills out as tears." Vivienne also knelt down. "Arya, do you give me permission to become part of your family?" Arya tilted her head, studying Vivienne intently. "You're going to stay with Daddy and me forever?" "I'll try." "You won't leave like Mommy Leah, right?" The question sliced through the air. The whole garden fell silent. Vivienne squeezed Arya's hand. "I promise you, I will never leave. No matter what happens, I will always be here." Arya stared at her for a long moment. Then she threw her arms around Vivienne. "I agree," she said brightly. "You can be my mom." In that moment, Jordan watched Vivienne cry like never before. Not tears of pain, not tears of loneliness, but the tears of someone who had finally found where she belonged. Mrs. Marjorie cried. Margaret cried. Even Dr. Moretti turned away to wipe his eyes. And when the minister pronounced them husband and wife, the applause rose. Not from hundreds of guests, just a few dozen people, but every clap was sincere. Every smile was real. That night, Jordan and Vivienne sat together on the balcony. "Do you regret it?" Vivienne asked softly. Jordan shook his head. "No. Do you?" Vivienne rested her head on his shoulder. "I've regretted many things in my life," she said quietly. "But this is not one of them." They sat there watching the stars shimmer across the Seattle sky. Because sometimes silence, when shared, means more than 1,000 words. But life never lets anyone remain happy without testing them. And the greatest test was already approaching. Not from Henderson, not from Leah, but from Vivienne's own body. Everything began on a November night. Vivienne was in her 6th month of pregnancy. Her belly was round and tight, and the baby kicked hard every night. Everything seemed perfect. Arya called Vivienne Mom Viv and clung to her every chance she got. Mrs. Marjorie had moved into a small house near the mansion. Henderson had gone silent after the wedding. And Jordan? For the first time in his life, he felt like he was truly living, not just surviving. But that night, everything changed. Jordan was asleep when Vivienne's cry of pain jolted him awake. She was curled up, clutching her stomach, her face frighteningly pale. "Vivienne, what's wrong?" "It hurts," she whimpered. "It hurts so much, Jordan." Jordan switched on the light, and his heart nearly dropped. On the white sheet was a streak of red blood spreading rapidly. "Hold on. I'm calling an ambulance right now." 15 minutes later, the ambulance arrived. Jordan sat beside Vivienne on the stretcher, gripping her hand tightly. "You're going to be okay," Jordan whispered, unsure if he was speaking to her or trying to reassure himself. "Our baby will too." At Swedish Medical Center, Jordan sat in the surgical waiting room for hours. Dr. Moretti was in the operating room with the medical team. Mrs. Marjorie arrived near dawn, carrying a sleepy Arya. "Daddy, why is Mom Viv at the hospital?" Arya asked anxiously. Jordan embraced his daughter. "Mom Viv is sick, sweetheart. The doctors are taking care of her. Is she going to be okay?" Jordan couldn't answer. He simply held Arya tighter. Nearly 5 hours later, the operating room door opened. Dr. Moretti stepped out with a weary face, his dark eyes sunken with worry. Jordan shot to his feet. "Doctor, my wife." Dr. Moretti looked at him heavily. "Mr. Hale, we need to speak in private." Jordan followed him into a small room. "Mrs. Drake had placenta previa," Dr. Moretti said, his voice low. "The fetus experienced severe oxygen deprivation. We performed an emergency C-section." Jordan felt his knees nearly give out. "My baby?" "It's a girl, born at 26 weeks. She weighs only 800 grams. 800 grams. Lighter than a bottle of soda. She's being moved to the neonatal intensive care unit," the doctor continued. "Her lungs aren't fully developed. We're doing everything we can, but I can't promise anything." "And Vivienne?" "She lost a great deal of blood. We've stabilized her, but to save her life, we had to remove her uterus." Jordan stood frozen. That meant Vivienne would never be able to get pregnant again. "Can I see her?" Jordan stepped into the recovery room. Vivienne lay pale among the tubes and machines, but her eyes were open. "It's a girl," she whispered. Jordan took her hand. "Our daughter is being cared for. She's tiny but strong, just like her mother." Tears slid down Vivienne's temples. "I'm sorry. I couldn't. Don't say that." Jordan kissed her forehead. "You did everything. You fought. The doctor said I can't have children anymore." Jordan tightened his grip. "That doesn't matter. What matters is that you're alive. You're here. With me, with Arya, with our daughter." Vivienne looked at him, eyes brimming. "You're not disappointed?" "Vivienne," Jordan said, his voice cracking, "I didn't marry you because you could have children. I married you because you're you. Because I love you." It was the first time he said it. Vivienne's eyes widened. "What did you just say?" "I love you, Vivienne Drake, because you're the strongest, loneliest, and most incredible woman I've ever met." Vivienne broke down, crying, years of grief finally spilling out. And Jordan sat beside her, holding her hand, letting her cry until the last tear fell. 3 months, 90 days. That was how long Eleanor Rose lay in the incubator, fighting for every breath. The first weeks were hell. Eleanor was so tiny, Jordan was afraid to touch her. Her deep brown skin was thin as paper. Her eyes were still closed. Her fingers were minuscule, fragile like matchsticks. Dr. Moretti made no promises. He only repeated, "We wait and we pray." Vivienne was discharged after 2 weeks, but practically lived at the hospital. Every day she sat beside Eleanor's incubator for hours, placing her hand against the glass. "Mom is here," she whispered. "Mom will always be here." Jordan sat beside her, holding her hand. They didn't need to say much. Just being there together was enough. Arya visited every week. "The baby is so small, Daddy. Smaller than my doll. But she'll grow," Jordan replied. "A little more every day." And she did. By week 4, Eleanor gained 50 grams. By week 6, she opened her eyes for the first time. Dark brown eyes looked at the world. Jordan burst into tears. "Vivienne! She opened her eyes!" Vivienne smiled for the first time in weeks. "My daughter, you're so beautiful." By week 12, Eleanor weighed 2 kilograms. Every gram gained was a victory. Every day that passed was a miracle. The day Eleanor was discharged was a late February day. Vivienne carried Eleanor in her arms, wrapped in the pink blanket Arya had chosen. The baby's deep brown skin was rosy, her cheeks plump, her dark eyes wide open. Arya skipped beside them excitedly. "The baby is coming home!" Mrs. Marjorie stood at the mansion door, tears brimming. She held her granddaughter and looked at the sky. "Dear, do you see?" she whispered, as if speaking to her late husband. "Our grandchild. She's so beautiful." Jordan watched his mother cradle the baby, watched his wife beside him, watched Aria laugh in the sunlight. A year ago, he was a desperate single father mopping floors at midnight. Now he had a family he'd never dared dream of. That night, Jordan and Vivienne sat together on the balcony. Seattle's night was quiet. The sky was clear with stars glittering overhead. "Do you remember the first time we met?" Vivienne asked softly. Jordan chuckled. "You made the craziest proposal I'd ever heard." Vivienne laughed, the pure, light laugh she had slowly relearned. "That day I thought I was signing another business deal. I didn't realize I was buying a ticket to happiness." "So you bought me?" Jordan raised an eyebrow playfully. "I paid a very high price for you." They both laughed, their voices echoing into the calm night. Then Vivienne grew quiet. "You know, I used to think I didn't deserve to be loved. I thought I was too cold, too broken." "You're not broken," Jordan said, squeezing her hand. "I know that now. You and Aria and Eleanor taught me." She turned to him, her dark eyes shimmering. "Thank you, Jordan, for not giving up on me, for seeing who I really am." Jordan leaned in and kissed her gently. A kiss of real love. 1 year later, the mansion was no longer silent. Aria's laughter echoed through the hallways. Eleanor's babbling drifted from the nursery. Mrs. Marjorie recited bedtime stories every night. Margaret complained about the kids, messing up her floors. Vivienne reduced her workload to spend more time with family. Henderson was forced to resign after his illicit transactions surfaced. Drake Global Capital still thrived, but for Vivienne, it was no longer everything. Jordan founded a charity supporting families with children suffering from heart diseases. "Someone helped me when I was at my lowest," Jordan said at the launch event. "Now it's my turn to give back." One Sunday afternoon, the family gathered in the yard. Eleanor took her first steps on the green grass, her tiny legs wobbling. Aria stayed close behind. "Come on, little Ellie, you can do it." Little Ellie was Aria's nickname for her sister. 2 sisters, 2 Ellies, one big, one small. Vivienne sat beside Jordan, her head resting on his shoulder. "Did you ever think life would turn out like this?" she asked softly. Jordan shook his head. "No, I used to think life was just surviving day by day. I didn't know people could be this happy." "And now?" Jordan looked at the children laughing on the grass, his mother sitting under the tree reading, the woman beside him, the woman he loved more than anyone. "Now I know," he said, smiling. Life wasn't perfect. There were tiring days, arguments, sleepless nights. Leah eventually got to see Aria once a month under Jordan's supervision. It wasn't easy, but Aria deserved a chance to decide her own relationship with her birth mother. Henderson disappeared from their lives, but the business world still had enemies. And sometimes the ghost of loneliness would return during Vivienne's restless nights. But unlike before, she no longer faced it alone. She had Jordan, Aria, Eleanor, Mrs. Marjorie. She had a family, and that was the most precious thing money could never buy. Not skyscrapers, not luxury cars, but the laughter of children running through the house, the hand that reaches for yours when night falls, the look that needs no words. That was love, real love, a love that sometimes begins in the most unexpected places. The story of Jordan Hale and Vivienne Drake ends here, but their lives continue, with sunny days and rainy days, with smiles and tears, with all the things that make a life worth living. And if this story teaches us anything, perhaps it is this: sometimes the strangest beginnings lead to the most beautiful endings. As long as we are brave enough to keep moving forward,